Okay, good afternoon all. Today we are going to look at the transport of substances across the cell membrane. So what is the cell membrane? The cell membrane is a layer that covers the cell which control the movement of substances in and outside of the cell. And this cell membrane is made of some components, and these components includes number one, we have lipids. We have lipids in the cell membrane. And second, we also have carbohydrates. We have carbohydrates. Then after carbohydrate, we also have proteins. Proteins are also present in the cell membrane. And after proteins, and one very interesting thing is most of the lipids that are found in the cell membrane are in this form. We have glycolipids, glycolipid, glycolipid. When we say glycolipid, it means it's a lipid that contain both sugar, that is carbohydrates, and lipids, and that make it glyco means sugar. Then glycolipid, it means it's made up of sugar and lipids. And then some of the proteins also that are found in the cell membrane, they are in the form of glycoproteins. Glycoproteins. When we said glycoproteins, it means sugar and protein. That's glycoproteins. It's made up of sugar and proteins. And some of the lipids that are found in this cell membrane are complex lipids. An example of these complex lipids, we have phospholipids as indicated here. We have phospholipids. And then we also have, and one very interesting thing that we should know, that what is a lipid? A lipid is made up of, or is just an ester of, a lipid is just an ester of fatty acids. It's made up of fatty acids. It's made up of fatty acids and glycerol. So glycerol and fatty acids is what actually esterify to produce lipids. And some of the lipids apart from the fatty acids, so all those kind of lipids that contain just fatty acids and glycerol, we call them simple lipids. We call them simple lipids. And then we have complex lipids. Then in the case of complex lipids, apart from the fatty acids, apart from this fatty acid and glycerol, there is also other compounds, there is other molecules, that is other groups are added. We have other groups apart from the fatty acid and glycerol. We have other organic groups, they are also attached there. So those kinds of lipids that have other groups apart from fatty acid and glycerol, they are called complex lipids. They are called complex lipids. But most of the lipids that are found in the cell membrane, as I said, they are in the form of glycolipids and also the complex lipids. So like, for example, here, look at these phospholipids. Look at these phospholipids. The phospholipid, and actually the lipids are defined based on their solubility and insolubility in a solvent. So generally, lipids are insoluble in water but soluble in organic solvent. So most of the lipids that we have are in the form of, so most of the lipids that we have, they are either most of the lipids that are found in nature, they are either hydrophobic lipids or amphiphilic. They are either hydrophobic or amphiphilic. Yes, amphiphilic is like this. Amphiphilic. So amphiphilic lipids, it means that are lipids that have both hydrophobic heads and hydrophilic head. It means that some part of it will interact with water, while some part of it will not interact with water. So most of the lipids that are found in the cell membrane, they are amphiphilic in nature. That is, they have both hydrophobic heads and hydrophilic heads. Like for example, in this case, look at this is a phospholipid and we call it phospholipid bilayer. So inside the cell, look at these balls here. Look at these balls. They are hydrophilic. It means that the outer part of the cell membrane from inside, that is from inside, it interacts with water, and also the hydrophilic head are also present from the outside parts of the membrane. So all these parts interact with water, while the hydrophobic component, it doesn't interact with water. This. All these, they don't interact with water. So it means that the hydrophobic component of water is remain hidden, its inside is hidden, so that it will not expose to liquids, or it will not expose to water or hydrophilic substances. All is hidden, all are hidden, all of them are hidden, while for the hydrophobic, they are outside. And then the next is the fluidity of membrane. The fluidity of membrane. Generally, cell membrane are fluid-like in nature. It means that when we say it is fluid-like in nature, it means that the phospholipid in the membrane are fluid-like. It means that they can move easily. Look at it. This is the lateral movement. 10 power 7 times per second. There is this movement. So it really floats. It can move from one point to another, the phospholipid. So that is why it is fluid in nature. They are fluid-like in nature. They are flipping and fluff. So that is how they are. They are fluid in nature. So these are the movement of phospholipids. Look at it. This one, it can move from one point to another. That is this. And then now, the semi-permeable membrane. When you said the cell membrane is semi-permeable, it means that it allows the passage through the membrane, but need to control what get in or out. So membrane is semi-permeable. It means that it is selective. It selects what will get in and select what will get out. And it will also select what will not even get into the cell. Look at it. Examples. We have sugar. AA means here stand for amino acids, lipids, water, and salt. So now we are going to see how this semi-permeable membrane work. So now, this is the phospholipid bilayer. When we said phospholipid bilayer, this is one layer and this is one layer. So it is now phospholipid bilayer. So now, what molecules can get through directly? What can get into the membrane directly is small lipids. The small lipid can slip directly through phospholipid cell membrane. Like example of small lipids molecules, we have drugs. So generally drugs, they are lipophilic, or if they are lipophilic, it means that they are they are lipid in nature, so they can easily get into the cell and outside the cell, because the phospholipid is lipid in nature and the drugs also lipid in nature, so it will dissolve. So they will dissolve each other. So as a result of that, the drugs can just get into into the cell directly without any barrier, because it is lipid in nature, so it can dissolve on the surface of the cell membrane and sink into the cell membrane. Look at it here. We have lipid here, so the lipid will now dissolve, and we also have sugar, we have amino acids, and we have water. So all these things, they can get into the cell directly without this thing. But mostly the small lipids or the lipophilic substances, they can easily get into the cell as fast as possible, because they, they solubilize each other. So getting through the cell membrane, how things get through the cell membrane? So it's through diffusion. And of course, we have this basic knowledge that what is diffusion? Diffusion is the movement of molecules from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. So we have what we call a passive transport. A passive transport is a type of transport in which substances are get into the cell without the need of energy. So the energy is not needed. In the case of passive transport, in the case of passive transport, energy is not needed. Energy is not needed. Energy is not needed in the case of passive transport. But in the case of active transport, energy is needed. That is plus energy. Energy is needed for you to get the substance into the cell. So in through active transport, you need energy for the substances to get into the cell. So in active transport, energy is needed. And under this passive transport is divided into two. We have what we call simple diffusion. Under passive transport, we have simple diffusion. We have simple diffusion, and then we have facilitate diffusion. We have facilitate diffusion. What is the difference between facilitated diffusion and simple diffusion? Simple diffusion is easy. It's just a movement of small molecules from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration without the need of any carrier, without the need of any channel. But in the case of the facilitated diffusion, a facilitated diffusion is usually a transport of larger molecules and is through a protein channel. So usually in the cell membrane, there is, let's say this is the cell membrane. So in the cell membrane, there is something like this, which is a protein channel. And there is also need of a carrier, a protein carrier. A protein carrier is like a cargo that usually take the biomolecules. It will take the biomolecules. After it takes the biomolecules, then it will now take it and pass it through the protein channel. So that is the difference between passive facilitated diffusion and simple diffusion. In simple diffusion, there is no need of any protein cargo or any protein carrier that will take the biomolecules, and there is no need for any channel. But in the case of facilitated diffusion, there is a need of a protein carrier, there is a need for a channel. So a protein carrier will take the biomolecules and gets into the cell through the protein channel, and is usually through the region of higher concentration to a low concentration gradient. That is in the case of facilitated diffusion. And then for the active transport, as I said, generally for both the simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion, there is no energy is needed. But in the case of active transport, as I said, energy is needed, And diffusion is against the concentration gradient. It means that the molecules are moving from the region of lower concentration to the region of higher concentration. And then in this case, there is a need for protein channel. There is a need for form. It uses a protein channel, and it requires ATP. ATP it requires in this case, it needs ATP. So please, in summary, we have two types of transportation of substances based on energy requirement. We have passive transport. So in the case of passive transport, no energy is required. We don't need energy. No energy is required. And in the case of active transport, energy is required. Then for the passive transport is divided into simple diffusion and vacillated diffusion. For the simple diffusion, the molecules, those small molecules, will just move from the region of high concentration to the region of lower concentration through SME factories, through the cell membrane. And as a result of that, it doesn't require any carrier, and there is no need for any protein channel. That is like a door where it will pass. Then in the case of passive diffusion, usually it's larger molecules that pass through a protein channel from the region of higher concentration to the region of low concentration gradient. And in this case, apart from a protein channel, a protein carrier is also needed. But in the case of active transport, the active transport energy is needed, and there is the need of protein channel, and it moves against a concentration gradient. That is from the region of lower concentration to the region of higher concentration. So I'm going to stop here for this video, and I'm going to upload another one.